Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, show number 213. With us is special co-host Stephanie Smith with CAGO Marketing, who is the founder, matriarch. Well, you have a pretty cool title in your LinkedIn. What is the full title that you gave in the LinkedIn? It was like omnipotent supreme
founder
leader
and
of all
digital matriarch. I came up with it myself.
Very, you know what? It makes the point. It does. It makes the point. I just ask me anything. I know everything. It's all good. It's. I am the matriarch of this. But no, and also, Mr. Ed was saying I was with Flip to. Thank you, Mr. Ed, for being with us so early. Now, Robert's going to be joining us in just a moment as well. As promised, we said that for the first half hour, Stephanie, that you can dominate our conversation with everything and anything that you want to talk about, whether it be the weather or Ed's posters or anything, whatever you like to talk about. So, Mr. Robert Cole, hello. Robert, meet Stephanie. Stephanie, meet Robert.
Hello, Stephanie.
Happy Friday.
Robert is the docent of hospitality. He will tell you who, when, where, and exactly when he was there for the overbooking of the manger in Bethlehem.
for without now everything in the past, Ed covers everything in the future. So
that's true.
That's how we break that.
And if Tim Peter does join us, he'll tell you everything above from a 6,000 point view. And Mr. Stewart, who, wow, in the middle of a hurricane, he's still here. Stuart Butler with Fuel Travel. He will tell you all the things that you need really to know. So, yeah. But Stephanie, please, by all means, welcome and to our motley crew of dialogue and coffee.
Happy Friday, everybody. Thanks for having me and join the entourage here this Friday morning.
Happy to have you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. I'm in a broadcasting from a hotel today. Imagine that. So hopefully there's limited background noise
good.
So
and to be fair, you might not thank us by the end of this.
You're thinking it sounded like a good idea. Ha!
And housekeeping's here. That's all good. That's good.
Like
That's
I said, cool.
We've been putting up, being with over 5 years. All of us, in some capacity or another, have been in some pretty unique places when we joined the show. So it's all good. It's part of the process. So, but please tell us a little bit about CAGO Marketing, what you do. I'm dying to jump into some conversations about what you do because you are kind of like a mirror to me in some ways. So I really am looking forward to some of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So CAGO Marketing is based off supporting digital marketing for branded hotels. I think a lot of you guys in the room are dedicated to building websites and whatnot for independent hotels. And unlike you guys, I know the intricacies and do my best to keep up with all the brand changes, whether that's Hilton, Marriott, IHG, Hyatt. Each one of them kind of have different strengths and whatnot, and learning their systems, their CMSs, and what can be done, and understanding the limitations of where the brand stops doing their thing and where the hotel level marketing should be picking up, and understanding that dividing line of promoting your hotel against other hotels in the same brand, but also other hotels in your comp set. And I'm trying to differentiate that. Even if you're one of the old school Marriott brands, you still need to determine your value proposition and make sure that is first and foremost. So learning the reporting, learning all of their internal systems, and then the different marketing tools is kind of where my expertise lies.
So are you finding that there's more focus in this area for these types of hotels over the last couple of years than there had been previously?
I think different brands are in different points in terms of how much they value the digital landscape and where they are in terms of trying to move that big massive ship of their brand.com into a more functional space. So I think some of them are doing better and some of them are still 10 plus years behind.
You've been really
so exactly which ones would be in which categories?
which is the worst one to deal with?
If you could put them in rank order and somehow give us an order of magnitude, that would be perfect. So.
That's quite prophetic to say rank order, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've written, I would say, Marriott obviously has their own in-house digital team that they do what they can, and they have, at least from an SEO standpoint, they've done. They at least have given the hotel level people more tools than some of the other brands, and we'll leave it at that.
So
So do you have a lot of Hilton clients?
Yeah, Hilton is going through a transition with their One Hero Web and their Advance and Amplify programs.
Right.
So
Yeah. And cutting off all of the separate websites, the vanity sites that folks had. We used to work with a couple, we're primarily independent of the properties that we work with, but we used to have a few Hiltons, and they've just been chopped off at the kneecaps because of these changes over the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know if
yeah,
you've experienced the same.
Hilton was the first to get rid of vanity sites, and they went at it a different way and said your operations QA is going to get dinged even if they found a vanity URL out there.
Yeah.
Then Marriott's done the same thing, and as of a few months ago, IHG actually is rolling out the get rid of vanity sites and jumping on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
Trying to boost those similar web numbers all to their traffic, right?
Yeah. And if you look at have any of you looked at the new Hilton One Hero Web websites that they've pushed out for a select portfolio of hotels?
Mm-mm.
No.
I have not.
So they're basically going to a one-page format. So, and stripping off the majority of the content and all the supplemental pages and going
Wow.
to almost a choice model in terms of the one-page website. So,
Well, that'll help the discoverability of all the rich content that people have built out over the last
Yep.
several years.
yeah. So,
Wow.
but literally that most of them just launched within the last, most of them launched July-esque. So still waiting on data to see if the conversion numbers and everything has been affected. So, and waiting with a bated breath.
Do you have an example of one of the site, or does a property come to mind? Or
Yeah. Does my screen share go off when I toggle back and forth?
No,
maybe
no. You're
whatever you do, if there's a red button at the top of the page, do not hit that red button.
Yeah.
or do.
Yeah, if you
It
want
ends
to
the whole
share a
thing.
screen, there is a
You wanna
right
end
the microphone
everything.
button. There is a share screen button.
Okay.
Or you can just put the link in the chat, and it'll get distributed to the other channels as well. Now, in your conversations with hotels that are doing this, or that what Hilton, are you arguing the point that this is going to dilute their value proposition, or is it not a point that you can even argue? It's just a matter of adapting to the fact that this is now canon and that you now have to do it this way, and what does it limit your options?
I mean, I think it's one of those things I guess I'm forced to adapt to that I'm not necessarily on board with. Even their photo galleries, most of them are cut down to 12 images. So you can see what that can kind of do to just that storytelling piece of it. So adaptation is what do you have to do with Hilton, because it's much harder to fight. So I haven't,
Ed,
winning those battles.
sorry to interrupt, Ed. Haven't you found that 2 pictures is really the optimal sort of?
Yeah,
you get an exterior porte cochere picture needs to be kind of the main,
And a front desk.
And the front desk, right? Hopefully with no guests or staff.
Don't show any guests. Yeah, no life whatsoever. As if
Low
Whatever you
resolution.
do,
It has to be pixelated.
do not pollute your website with content about the things around you.
It's a horrible
And
idea.
quite honestly, don't put your address anywhere easily found.
Phone numbers
Well,
are
phone
so
numbers.
old.
Yeah,
you are
so
not
do.
trendy and cool if you have a phone number.
Well,
or
I think
anything
Google
like
actually dings you in search now if you put a phone number on your website. So
At this point, I'd like to point out our sarcasm is going crazy. No.
So what are you finding? I mean, so the example you put up, say Hampton Inn, which I mean, again, we have to remember that Hampton Inns, Homewood Suites, Hilton Garden Inns, this is the majority of the hotel count of Hilton. It's not Hawaiian Village or the El San Juan in Puerto Rico. Like, those are a completely different, very small subsect animal of overall Hilton. So in what you're dealing with, are you dealing with the owner, manager of a Hampton Inn, or are you also trying to help the larger resort style properties?
I would say both, but I would say that most of the larger resorts have some type of existing support already. It's the select service and extended stay hotels that have assumed I would say it's a misconception that the owners have assumed for a long time, oh, the brand does that for me. So, and if they think, oh, if the brand does it, I don't need to worry about it. But as you see with the amount of development and the amount of influx of hotels that are coming to a lot of market, there's still an opportunity, because not only is this Hampton, you know, in most markets, there's, you know, you're inundated with, you're not only competing against other brands, but you're competing within your own brand. So how can you set yourself apart and make sure that you're, you know, because you're, you know, you're being judged off of small things. And I think there's the other big misconception that I come across is that, you know, us as hoteliers may know the difference between the different extended stay brands, whether it's Home2 and Homewood, or the difference between a residence and a town place, but I don't think the average consumer knows that. So making sure that as we try to differentiate across brands, that we're putting whatever not only what the brand has defined as their value proposition, but also what makes, you know, each Hampton Inn still has unique offerings or amenities as it relates to location, and things like that, and making sure that that's first and foremost, you know, on your brand.com site, but across all your platforms.
Stephanie, one of the shows that we did, which was a lot of fun, was Robert gathered the mission statements of the brands and images of brands, and he read them, and then we had to guess what brand they were, and then actually showed images, and we were 0 for 0.
Well, and these weren't just mission statements. These were the stated descriptions
Yes,
when you go down the brand page of the chain sites, right? Exactly how they differentiate their brands, you know, directly. And
yeah. So
it's
feel
a quite challenging task, even for members of their own hotel groups don't do well. So
how do you tackle that when you're sitting down in front of somebody that owns, you know, generic brand A or generic brand B? We don't have to keep picking on Hilton. How do you tackle that? You know, the idea that they think the brand, number one, their awareness that the brand isn't doing it for them, that the brand has limitations of what the brand is even willing to do for them, the exercise of the tools that the brand's even being available to them. And how do you tackle that whole conversation? Because they're thinking, like, okay, well, that's what the brand wants to do. I'm paying them. You know, they want to make it one page and cut out half my pictures and whatever. You know, how do you tackle those conversations?
I feel like it's a lot of I look with a lot of smaller management companies, and they either, unfortunately, it's a very reactive state where they get in, where they're like, oh, you know, there's hotels coming into the market. What am I supposed to be doing about it? Or I'm losing market share, or I've lost accounts, or when I Google myself, I can't find myself. So unfortunately, a lot of the times they know they need to do something, and they are like, what am I doing? So a lot of times I feel like they're willing to make the investment. They really don't know what they don't know. So I try to, as I'm cleaning up and auditing, I'm also trying to train them at the same time so that they can understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. They all know at this point, for the most part, reviews are important, images are important, but it's all the other pieces, the smaller pieces that kind of go into play that is a learning experience for a lot of them. So I give props to the one that say, even though it's sad to say they've got along this whole time without doing any marketing outside of what the brand does, there's still a lot of owners out there that in that situation.
So
how does social come into the conversation for you with them?
Sorry, there were two people talking.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Stuart. Go ahead. I already got my question.
Age before beauty, Lauren. Go ahead.
Oh, sweet talker. All right.
You old and me beautiful, but never mind.
Wise, wisdom, you know. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
How does social come into the conversation when you're talking to them about solutions and value?
There's probably going to be a difference of opinion in terms of storytelling with social, that because I would say the majority of my clients are the select service extended stay. And I found that you can spend a lot of time and effort for these type of hotels, but the reason that those people or guests usually stay at that hotel isn't because of their social media presence. So, you know, their needs are much more basic. So I tend to leverage social media more from an advertising standpoint to try to put, you know, incremental eyes in front of, you know, specific, whether it's related to demand generators or different segments that the hotel's trying to target, and leverage social media in that fashion has been, at least in terms of ROI and in terms of time and money spent, that's better spent for those select service and extended stay hotels. Okay. So You guys can scream that
No,
may
I
not
would
be
agree.
there.
I would
No.
agree 100% with that.
Yeah.
And I'd even push it further to say that some independent hotels should take that approach too. That they spend way too much time on social media doing stuff that really doesn't move the needle. So no,
Yes.
I agree 100%. Yeah. My
Yeah,
question was
I did
going to
not
be,
see
gonna get
that
us
coming.
disagreeing
I
with
thought
you on
somebody
that.
was for sure going to
Yeah,
argue
no.
with me on that point.
no, it's
No,
funny
no,
because we tend to have, similar opinions, but we do argue from time to time on the show. But what you'll find is we're our own little echo chamber, but not necessarily an echo chamber of conventional wisdom. So whereas people in the industry will have clickbaity headlines about how great social media is, we tend to formulate our own opinions and tend to be well thought out too, which
When
at
a-
least well argued.
yeah,
And when a hotel says,
It is well argued. Yeah, not
Yeah.
fact-based arguing, but it is well
Right.
Oh
argued.
gosh, no. No.
sometimes
if
we
the
look at
hotel is going to
data,
come to me and say, "Oh, I need to do social. I need to do social,"
Yeah.
you got to stop the break and say, "Why do you feel
Right.
like you need to do
Yeah.
social?
Yeah.
What
but
goals are you
they're
trying
doing
to?"
it. The guy next door's doing it. I have to do it.
Exactly.
I
Well,
read
and
this article on
like
LinkedIn that
most
told me I had to.
things, right? But like most things, like the actual reason should be goal oriented. What are your goals?
Right.
What is a Hampton Inn going to do on social that's going to add value to an audience? And not saying that there isn't things that they can do if they happen to have really great staff that can handle being a persona, that could be interesting. But I wouldn't say if their version is going to match what most version is, which is posting that it's Taco Tuesday and today's National Take Your Cat to Work Day, like that is
It's
wasted
sunny at
effort.
72.
Right. And
Yep.
you can tell that they falsely think they're successful. So if you go to some of these hotels that have invested wrongly in that effort, and you actually look at who their engaged users are on their posts, it's other members of the management company, sister properties from within the management company.
Staff.
It's all staff. And so,
Yeah.
Fiverr users from Botswana and
Yeah.
somewhere in East Asia.
Prince of Nigeria.
I used to work with a traditional
But
agency.
within the branded hotels, I guess like one of the nuances that you'll learn, like they set up parent-child relationships. So if you're I don't know, if you're a Courtyard, you're tied to that Courtyard main Facebook page, and if you choose not to post anything, which is fine, but if you choose not to push any content out there, then anything from that brand parent page is going to stream down to your page. So if you're a Courtyard in Orlando and the main brand page decides to talk about an opening in Omaha, that's unfortunately going to stream down to your page. And I feel like that's a complete disconnect in terms of, what audience you do have. So even though I don't think you need to, invest tons of money, I would rather see something that's at least, I'd rather see a travel tip Tuesday than something about a hotel in completely another market. So.
Yeah, well, and I completely agree with that. And there are some management companies that have really started doing that well for these types of hotels, where they are regionally managing portfolios and are really doing what they can, which is exposing the personality of the team. And making it so if you do happen upon the page as part of your search criteria, you'll at least feel good that these are good people doing good, interesting things. And then some of them have just really developed really amazing strategies for a hotel that you would be surprised that they'd have so much capability. So but it really has to be thought through. I think it's something that every one of these types of hotels should consider as part of their strategy, just because they have a lot more freedom of what they can actually put content-wise in that channel than they do on any other channel. So it is an opportunity to become an expert about your local experiences, and that can gain a lot of impact. But again, it's quality, not quantity. This isn't a full-time position for a hotel like this.
Right. It needs to be the appropriate level of effort, and you need to measure the appropriate metrics. You know, too many people, because
Yeah.
for every one that is doing it well, Ed, I would say there's probably 5 management groups that are doing a terrible job, right?
That's why I
Yeah.
said it with a tone of surprise. In
Yeah.
my voice that I have an
I just-
example.
I'll be careful how I say this, because I guess I'm under sort of NDA, but being a judge for the Adrians this year, for the second year, and reading some of the entries and how many people are measuring success on impressions and just this vanity metric stuff with no, and these are big franchises, companies.
Wait, they're actually measuring success. Well, there's been a step
the ones
forward.
that are, even them, are not measuring things like,
they're wrongfully
increase in revenue or increase in heads and beds. They're measuring these vanity metrics that really don't matter. You know,
So Stuart's actually giving them credit for the fact that he went past the list of people that just simply said they tried a platform. There was a few in there that are nothing more than, we tried this platform.
Literally said we used this new ad platform. It just said, here's how many impressions we got.
Congratulations.
Good for you.
And I have to ask though if any of them are maybe branded hotels, because I feel like that's the biggest limitation on the branded side is the lack of access of analytics and data. So Hyatt has, at least down to the management company or a hotel or owner side, Hyatt has some great data, but the other three, the data that you get is sketchy at best, not to mention their use of attribution models and whatnot. So you have to make decisions based off, you kind of have to make some leaps of faith in terms of connecting the dots sometimes. So that's probably the biggest struggle in terms of running these different campaigns or putting these strategies together.
Yeah, and that's why we really backed away from the flag properties as an agency. We just, we realized we couldn't do the things we wanted to do without being able to measure the level of success the way we wanted to. So that was part of
which fits into their brilliant evil plan of getting these hotel owners to fork over extra cash to take part in marketing programs, because spending your own money to send it into the abyss of untrackability is something that's hard to justify.
And there is some. I mean, Marriott and Hilton have both come a long ways in terms of, both of those brands have ways to do to get MCID or SCID, or this is just a lot of acronyms, or build out CLPG pages so that you can track individual campaigns. But in terms of any type of, access to Omniture or anything like that, it's it's just not there. You can pull specific social reports, maybe referring domain reports. So you can sometimes, but you just have to know where to look. And I don't feel like they do a very good job of communicating the tools that are out there, unless you know what you don't know.
And that's kind of a question I want to have. We haven't really talked about your background as to what brought you to why you started your business doing this with the brands. And, and because of your history, and please tell us more about it, is, do you turn into an advocate of knowing who to call to say, look, you have the data, give me the dang thing so I can get this in front of them so they can make a decent decision? I mean, tell us a little bit about what got you to where you are, and do you actually, start tweaking some names and calling up some people in the food chain going, come on, guys, you have it. Just send me the damn, data.
It definitely helps to know people, for sure. So I started my career with Hyatt on the operations side. Then I went to work for an agency. So very much like you guys, that was back when vanity sites for brands were huge. So we were able to, do a lot of the things that we can't do now. That's where I, learned a lot about SEO and just, UNAP and all of those things. Then I went to work for a large management company that had over 100 hotels. And that gave me just the leverage that company had in terms of the volume of this, especially all three of the Marriott, Hilton, IHG gave me exposure to a lot of people. And then within Marriott, they have a digital franchise committee, and I was on the advisory council for 3 years. So that not only gave me resources to other people at management companies like myself so that we could, trade ideas and methodologies and things like that, but it also gave, an insight into kind of Marriott's thought process. And then on the IHG side, I was on the Owners Association board. So I would say their force of change is a little bit different than the other brands, and how the brand chooses to make decisions and things like that because of that owners group. So, which is unique to the IHG brand, but it kind of helped me understand how they work differently and how their goals are set up differently based on their relationships. And I really felt like I'd worked with a lot of different agencies before I had a team, trying to work with different agencies and most of them don't have the insight to understand how the brands work so differently. And they have their own proprietary systems, or, they're trying to put this square peg into a round hole. So I really feel like there was an opportunity, to be focused primarily in this branded space.
Do you have any clients that you have to deal with brand saturation issues in their market that, as you said, with the mergers and everything else, and their assignment that you have 5 keywords and this is all we're going to track, and that you have to share these and you can't have those because that's them and that's not you? And how do you mitigate all that, or do you have that experience yet with it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, the brand, if you're not managing it at a hotel level, the brand's going to put a brand first strategy in. So they're going to assume, Hilton is going to go after, they're going to make sure that they capitalize on all Hampton terms, for example, in a market. And that's kind of their, how they tend to go in terms of optimization, because they're going after, they want to make sure that brand loyalists and things like that are there. So you have to find that dividing line, especially if there's multiple, let's say, Hamptons in a market, trying to differentiate yourself, and also compete against them. So there's definitely market saturation in markets. But again, there's so many hotels in this area that don't give any effort to digital at all. So
yeah, that was a bit of a tight way for it. What are some strong successful strategies you have working against independents in market that are the nimble ones that have the ability to be flexible in their content, flexible in their engagements, flexible in their tactics compared to the rails you have to run between?
In terms of success stories, I feel like a lot of those are, I've done my fair share of openings. I've either opened or converted about 40 hotels, a little over 40. So there's a lot of, probably another misconception is owners think if I have the newest and prettiest in the market, if I build it, they will come. And so if I get involved early enough in that process and make a plan, then that hotel can ramp up a lot faster by supporting different, tools that are outside of the brand to help that hotel ramp up faster. It's always sad if a hotel's been open 6 months and then you get brought in and they're like, and you're so far behind the game at that point. It takes so long, so much. You're kind of starting from ground zero almost. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of what the brands don't do very well, as well in terms of conversions and openings, is any type of UNAP or NAPW consistency, just distributing it out there. If there's a name change or a flag change, and being able to tackle all of those different websites that they're on, because most of the brands use a platform called Yext that you guys probably are familiar with. But that, Yext, most of the brand partnerships only cover about 40 websites in terms of UNAP or NAPW. And the digital ecosphere is much, much larger than that. So there's, a huge opportunity to make sure that is at least clean and telling that consistent story of who your new brand is or who your new hotel is, so to speak.
Yeah.
What do you feel like are the biggest gaps in general from a day-to-day marketing perspective that the brands are not providing? Where do you find the biggest opportunity when you come into a property?
Like in terms of what the brand, the brand limitations or opportunities.
Yeah, what the brand should be doing, or the perception is they were doing that isn't happening, that you can come in and supplement or replace and see the biggest bang for the buck.
Well, I don't think there's ever one magic wand, so to speak, but there is definitely an opportunity for every single hotel to have better content and understanding what content you can add to a specific hotel. I'll go in, let's say there's 20 different places in their CMS that you can add content. I would say half the time, 30-40% of those places are just blank. So even though there's a huge limitation on the content you can put out there, you still need to fill in and take advantage of what you can talk about. There's also a huge opportunity if your hotel's ever been through any type of renovation. There's usually all those old renovation photos that are still out there on every single website that need to be cleaned up. If there's been no hotel level optimization from an SEO standpoint, it's all brand, or just going after the hotel name. There's a ton of things that the hotels don't look at. I also look at their like Expedia and Booking.com profiles and make sure that they're optimized. That's usually, sometimes that's handled by revenue managers, but not very frequently. So, and then I think the other thing is just turning on paid marketing channels that the brand doesn't maintain for you. Like most of the brands have some type of opt-in for meta search, but outside of that, most of their paid advertising, there's not much opportunity for any paid advertising through the brand to supplement for your hotel. So once the kind of cleanup is done, understanding what channels are available to you outside of the brand that you can run without getting your hand slapped.
How much of a focus do you put on consumer sentiment feedbacks and so forth, like you mentioned Expedia and so forth? Do you focus in on them, making sure that they have a fast response rate and so forth, especially early on when they do come out as a new shiny penny hotel, that they kind of get ahead of the roll and make sure that they get that ranking, that rating, that response level so that they show well? Is that something that you focus with, or you were just say it is what it is, as long as it's accurate?
No, I think it's, I tend to push Google and TripAdvisor reviews. The brands, love to have their own internal surveys pushed, but obviously that's not going to reach the majority of the audience. I like with Expedia, you can do those real time, like happy face things. And I actually usually tell the hotels to turn those off, because I feel like that trains the hotels or trains consumers and guests to continue to use that channel. So I usually say turn that off, but you still need to have the reviews through there.
Right.
Wow. Hey, I was multitasking while you're going through that, because this is the first Hilton, the new version. I knew they were working on the new website. I just hadn't seen any. There aren't great search engine spiders available, because certainly a lot of the sites block bots. But the one that I use, very interesting output from it. So can I just go a quick little summary? 690 words on the page, 316 unique words. So that's not so good. H1 heading, Hampton Inn with Wetumpka. Okay. No H2, no H3 headings, no bold text. The alt link text, Hampton by Hilton. No on-page links. So interesting, very, very interesting strategy of how they do this. So
Yeah.
Well, and if you
very clean. It's kind of the minimalist, kind of like Picasso. Do you ever see the picture where he just did like 3 lines? It's kind of like that.
Isn't that their MO though? I mean, they're doing everything. It seems from an outsider perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you work with these guys more, but it seems like every major decision from a marketing perspective is really geared towards making it easier to manage and keep control than it is what's going to be most effective for the individual property.
Yeah,
but that works.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it shouldn't at all be focused on, what's a traveler expectation?
Yeah.
And how do you make the experience
Heaven
useful?
forbid we put the guest first, in the hospitality business. That'd be
Well,
crazy.
If you did that, then you'd actually be competing with like OTAs for travelers.
Oh my Lord. Heaven forbid.
Go ahead, Stephanie, you were saying.
Well, I was going to say, I wonder if does anything in your, whatever tool you're using, like I use Moz to look at these, and what they've done to the URL structure is probably one of my bigger things. So they basically changed their entire URL structure in terms of their previous use of subdomains and how they've done their redirects. And,
it's horrible.
I'm like, that's it's not passing. It's, I don't think they did their 301s right. I don't think that they, it's passing that value from the old subdomains and websites at all. But sorry.
But that's tomorrow's.
There's no nested destination structure, nothing like that. Yeah, that's crazy. Really, really insane.
Stuart, is that your background?
I don't know what voice that is. I can hear it, but it's not.
I can hear it too. It's not me. No.
It's like,
I figured, Myrtle Beach maybe.
It's Hurricane Dorian.
He's got
It's probably
He's got a blaster whirring around his office because he was doing a little lightsaber training earlier. But
Well, he had a hard time getting to work today because his Jeep was stranded on the beach.
Yeah.
That's funny. Have you seen the meme? I don't know if you guys followed the hurricane yesterday, but literally, I probably got 50 different people texted or IM me about this freaking Jeep that was on the beach that someone drove down and got stuck in the swash. And it was like, remember when that giraffe was going to have a baby and everyone was watching it, but nothing was happening. You just didn't want to miss it when it did. That was what was happening with the Jeep yesterday. It was like we had one eye on the news for the Dorian, was it going to flatten us? And the other was, is this Jeep going to flip over? Like that was everyone's day yesterday. It was the craziest thing. And by the end of the day, when we realized it wasn't going to be too crazy, people started going down and taking selfies on this Jeep. Like there was hundreds of people just going up and sitting on the roof and taking their photos and stuff.
Get a life.
Someone broke the window on it. But I love the Myrtle Beach
it's
Chamber, really bringing closure to the whole situation. The very first video they had posted on social today was them towing the Jeep with a backhoe.
So, Stephanie, do you find that you have to travel to the properties directly to deal with engaging them on what you're doing, or can you do it remotely and then eventually follow up with them? How do you have to? What's the most convincing process that you found to be successful doing what you do?
No, I usually do it remotely, and I feel like there is something to be said, like when you're trying to determine what the value proposition is for that individual hotel. So I do my own line research and I pretend like I'm going to be a consumer staying at that hotel. And I kind of make up what I think is the story of this hotel. And then when I have the conversation with the hotel, I say, okay, this is, I've never been to your hotel. This is what I see. Is this story, your online story, match with what the story you're telling, from a sales standpoint or from an operations standpoint, and then trying to make sure that they basically match. So it always is helpful to go to a hotel, but I feel like most people are doing what I'm doing. They're making that decision before they ever go to the hotel. So,
now, do you deal mostly with ownership groups or individual hotels, or combinations? They're all pretty much the same.
I feel like most of them I work with smaller management companies that don't have that dedicated in-house expertise. So they're looking for somebody, maybe they have 5 to 15 hotels in their portfolio, and they need some grander oversight. And again, it's that training aspect where they don't necessarily know what they don't know, but they know they need to do something, but they may not have, X amount of dollars set aside for that person. So I find that a lot of hotels are if they have a stronger Marriott portfolio, that they are, they can potentially use, MDS for some of those services. Hilton, like I mentioned earlier, rolled out with their new advanced program, which is probably a harder thing for me to combat, because as most hotels are seeing in this area are seeing about a $2,000 per year increase in terms of fees. But what you're getting for that is a little bit harder to tangibilize. Yes, you're going from a, maybe 8-page website down to 1. And so they're paying obviously they have to finance that in some capacity. But there's still that dividing line with, what the brand does versus what they don't do. But that's the smaller management companies are kind of my niche, so to speak, just because once you reach, I would say 25 hotels, most of them have, I would not say most, a large majority of them have made that investment. Like 4 years ago when I joined the Marriott franchisee committee, there was, I don't know, I think there were about 60 management companies or so that had some type of digital resource in-house but fast forward now, I mean, it's, there were a lot of people coming in that said, they would get hired, but they didn't know anything. So they would, like the different advisory council members would say, okay, this is the kind of stuff you have to start doing. These are the things that you need to know. So it was almost like a mini kind of training thing that was put together for some people as management companies decided to make that investment.
That's right. I'm from the agency side in the interior. I remember the transition for it. It's now, this is going to be kind of a rough question if it puts you in a comfortable position, but do you think the certification with HSMAI has made an impact within the infrastructures of the brands? Marriott went full tilt in. They're saying, hey, we're going to go for certification. We're going to send people in for certification. Has it helped the expansion of companies and ownerships and managements to consider that somebody getting the certification is going to help them expand their ability to handle these things, or is it just simply it's in the market, people may be aware of it, but it's not really an influencing factor?
I think the certificate, I think it's a good one from a baseline, making sure you have your bases covered. So I think it's a good starting point. Do I think that management companies care? I don't know. I think that individuals within the space, want to be able to show that they have some knowledge. Outside of that certification, I actually, like Cornell's building a longer term kind of hands-on type course. I think it's going to be like an 8 or 12-week course. So I think where the HSMAI certification is maybe more entry level, I think you could potentially, from a learning standpoint, transition into that. But I don't think hotels or most owners or management companies or know about that certifications from like an operations standpoint. So I think it's maybe an area of opportunity. They definitely know of HSMAI, and I think a lot of people know about the conferences that happen, and it's kind of a matter of putting those things together, I think.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's an Cornell course, right? That they're putting together.
Yeah. They're trying to expand into a more advanced.
Oh no, and it's brilliant.
The HSMAI program was supposed to be 3 tiers. It was supposed to be initially entry, intermediate, and advanced, and they've gotten to this one so far. So we'll see. Now the other is that now, do you, when you go in, do you say, I'll do this for you, or am I going to do this for you and show you how you can do it for yourself? How's the blend of what you do? I mean, are you leaving a trail of happiness and apple seeds behind you, or are you saying, look, I have the magic in this bag, and when I leave, it goes with me? I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely knowing the systems is helpful, because I can go in, if I found in the past, if I say, okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what to submit to XYZ system, it never gets done. So once they agree with the new strategy I put in place, then I actually go and push all the buttons, clean up whatever, get access to everything and do it. I like to think that throughout the process, at least from a sales standpoint, having marketing, sales, and revenue management all on the same page, hopefully I've left that imprint and that impact, how they can continue digital moving forward. There is, but I've definitely had a lot more people that are like, don't leave me hanging still. I need, don't leave me. So, trying to find the sweet spot in terms of either managing their paid marketing moving forward, or managing, at least keeping an eye on their SEO rankings and things like that move forward. I've found that a lot of people want that after that initial project work is done.
Yeah. So do you have long-term engagements with these, or are these short fix? And I mean, what's the average engagements that you have with most of them? Do you keep perpetual engagement as a part of the relationship, or?
It depends on relationship, but most hotels I work on a project basis. If it's an existing hotel, going through the entire audit process usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. If it's an opening or conversion, that's a much longer agreement, and that hotels never open on time, and development never goes the way that it's supposed to go. So there's that. But I also like doing, back to some of the larger management companies that I work with, have made the decision to hire somebody in-house. So I have opportunities to train them to make sure that they have all the tools that they need in their toolbox moving forward to be able to push and pull the levers and define strategy. So those are some of the longer agreements, just to make sure that they are comfortable with, everything, all the different options that are out there.
So your sweet spot for clients is all brand portfolio, mostly brand portfolio. Less than 25 hotels, what it sounds like, in the sense that they say they've yet to dedicate themselves internally. But what is that pretty much the right spot, or is that?
Yeah, I would say 75% of it. There's a couple of management companies that, will pick up a independent hotel and have no idea what to do with it. But in those scenarios, I'm more of a strategist and sourcer, where I work with other, larger agencies, like you guys, to be that arm, because I'm not, I work with different website developers, but that's not my area of expertise anymore. So, partnering to make sure they're selecting the right PMS, the right CRS, and things like that, so that to kind of set them up for success, because they don't necessarily, again, know all the different moving pieces. So I may work with larger agencies to get that going, and then, you know, let them kind of take over. But their confidence is in me, so it's just setting them up.
I know this is a terrible parent question to ask. What's your favorite child? Which one do you feel you get the best relationship with out of all of this?
Yeah, I don't know if I feel like it depends on the client's goals and needs. So every larger agency, I know that everyone says they're full service, but they're better at some things than others. So every agency, some of them are good at design, some are good at SEO, some are great at social or content marketing. So it's understanding, again, what that hotel's goals are and being able to find the right partner fit for them. So that's why I work with actually a lot of different partners, because it's about finding the right long-term fit too for that hotel.
Except for fuel travel, which is great at everything
I
and
would not
perfect
agree with that.
for every kind of actually business,
Yeah.
any business, from
I was
a
actually thinking more
small
brand.
mom and pop to a Fortune
No.
top
I was
10
thinking more
company.
brand. I was thinking more
Everything.
brand. What
I
brand?
see.
What brand do you think you work best with? Because, like, I was going to ask you about CRM questions about it. We have successes in pulling data out, consumer, you know, customer engagement stuff. You know, but which brand do you think you can really? There's more manipulation opportunities, more data resources, more functionality things. Is there a brand that seems to stand out as being more functional in that sense? Sorry, I should be more clear on that one.
Sorry. Marriott, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of CRM and so forth, I mean, is there some things that you do when you walk into a hotel? Like, you know, when was the last email you participated in or something? I mean, what are some things you do to kind of kickstart some of their consumer engagement? That was a good sound. That was a good sound. I was like, yeah.
I mean, it's obviously, I don't know. That's a hard question, because I could, you know, again, name off like 15 things. You know, I feel if it's an underperforming or hotel, the first thing I do is look at their channel mix and see what their OTA contribution is versus brand.com, and use that as a guiding tool. Most hotels, you know, should be leveraging Expedia travel ads to do what they need to do. And then Facebook advertising, I feel like you get a large bang for your buck. And those are usually some of the easiest low-hanging fruit that you can implement, you know, immediately.
I've dominated the question.
So you mentioned earlier about getting slapped on the wrist. Are there things that you recommend to your clients where they're kind of in the situation of begging forgiveness, knowing that the consequences probably aren't as bad as they could be, so it's worth taking the risk to bend the rules a little bit?
I'm always going to ask for forgiveness versus permission.
Yeah.
So, you know, without saying, you know, there's the slap on the wrist is usually like the brand says, hey, you shouldn't do that. And you're like, okay.
Right.
I've never gotten
a couple of weeks
slap
and
on the
then
wrist
start again.
Yeah. We'll try to fix this. We don't know how.
That deterred me from recommending it for another client. I try to be upfront about like, hey, this is kind of in the gray area, but I try to obviously follow brand standards whenever you can. But sometimes you just have to fight a little bit harder for some hotels.
See, and it's funny. Lauren actually changed his last name to Gray because of his time doing marketing.
I heard about it already.
Doing marketing for.
Yeah.
I had to tell her my history with Marriott just because I was like, yeah.
His last name was originally Sanchez, but he changed it to Gray because he lives in the gray area.
Lived in the gray area for it. But I completely agree with you. It's better to get to for forgiveness. But
and Lauren likes to find the almost black edge of the gray area.
You got to know your limits. You got to know.
And then he likes
exactly
to search for mistakes in the line where it maybe is bumped a little, and then he gets right up in that too.
Yeah, it's in that little notch kind of stuff for it.
Exactly.
But yes, it is true. But now, given the fact that you don't always say social is a good solution process to it, and it's not actually a strong direct channel all the time, is there circumstances or clients that you've worked with where social was a good lateral shift for them? As to Ed's point, there's a great place for content. It's a great place to expand your voice when you have something to talk about. Is there been some circumstances where it's been successful for you in that way?
I guess my strategy is more aligned with like aligning your hotel with demand generators that are in the area or specific segments that you're targeting. So like I'm based out of Seattle, so how can we get more of those Canadian travelers that are coming down from Canada, and being able to put our hotel with all the different options that are in Seattle, being able to put our hotel and make that association, I feel like is key. Or just being able to associate yourself with the specific demand generators in the area and aligning things that way, especially when you've got, just inundated with so many choices. Making sure that people in that area, at least from a social standpoint, are associating you with those demand generators. I feel like that's more where my successes have come in for these smaller hotels.
Now, Stuart, we told you, Stuart loves Airbnb. He loves talking about Airbnb. He's an ardent fan of Airbnb.
I think that's a real threat.
Oh, yeah. He thinks it's a real threat. Now, do you? It's
paralytic fear of Airbnb, I think, is really
the fact that we even mentioned our Airbnb is only to taunt Stuart in his desire to stop talking about Airbnb. But anyway,
again, my issue is not Airbnb; it's the industry's obsession with Airbnb.
Do you, in your conversations with the smaller branded hotels, do you bring that into your conversation? Do you consider them in the market that you're dealing with? Do you even look at them as just nothing more than what they are, as a flexible dynamic inventory, or what? How do you approach it, or if at all?
I feel like that's a bigger fight for the brands to handle, and is more handled on a city or regional standpoint, depending on, if you've looked at the recent settlements they've had with Miami and Boston and things like that. I feel like it's handled. It's not something for an individual hotel that they can combat it at this point. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't feel like an individual hotel can do anything about it right now.
Yep. Nor should they worry about it. Right
That one was for you, Stuart. That just making sure.
They should consider getting in on blockchain technology.
Blockchain and AI.
Well, only full VR.
VR, yes,
I think you really want the IoT VR blockchain. That's kind of
yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that I can't even get them to update their pictures on their website, much less.
So already we're coming up on an hour, and I told you it's one of those things where you just kind of go, oh hey, let's say, so being mindful of time. And you're more than welcome to stay the entire time we're talking. By all means, I'm enjoying the conversation all heck, but I don't want to drag you through if you don't want to stay much longer. Is there anything that we've missed that you want to make sure we get to talk about from your perspective of what you do? Anything in that context that you want to make sure we didn't miss?
No, but I'm curious, as you guys work with a lot more independent hotels, do you feel like you see certain brands as a greater threat, or within market? Do you feel like you're competing more against other independent hotels in the online space, or?
Who would like to go first?
I will say from a selfish perspective, the fact the brands are, hamstringing their individual properties with the changes they're making, reducing vanity websites and not allowing them to do certain things is great for my clients. It's phenomenal. So I applaud them for that.
Stuart fully supports this strategy, feels it should spread to all the brands.
Cut back on all the content.
If Hilton's doing this, everyone should follow. Everyone should follow.
But I felt bad for a lot of products. We used to work with a Hampton Inn in the Myrtle Beach destination. It's one of, if not the only, oceanfront Hampton Inn. It's not like any Hampton Inn you've ever been to. It's like 4-star. It was ranked number 1 on TripAdvisor in the destination for a while. It was one of the few flagged properties on the ocean in Myrtle Beach until the last few years. But they got seriously hurt when they had to get rid of their vanity website. It was terrible for them.
Yeah.
Well, and let's be honest what that was about. That should be a Hilton, not a Hampton Inn.
Probably so. Probably so.
But it's easy. It's fish in a barrel. Anytime we want business from brands, we steal it. It's just,
so easy.
It is unfortunate because they are so limited. They are so categorized. Knowing that they're limited into the capacity of what they can represent themselves for, limited into their ability to get into the context of their destination, knowing that they're limited in the ability of their exposure as an entity of themselves rather than a brand that's represented by them. It's all just like, what do we want from them today? What rate do we want to steal from them today? What context? It's a shame because the product is quite nice when you consider the FF&E requirements and everything else. We can sell lipstick on a pig compared to what you sell as a Cadillac. You know, and it makes it challenging for the brands because it's a lumbering beast we just walk between their legs persistently on. And and especially with brand saturation, lack of brand diversification, because there's just too many of them. It's a dilution of white labeling now. It just makes it very painful to watch the fact that you can do that. I mean, and they need all the help that you can give them, because in all honesty, everything you just said that you do is literally the only levers and tools of fighting that they have. They're pitchforks and knives against machine guns and helicopters.
But do you actually, so I guess where I struggle is most of my star comp sets usually don't have many independent hotels in them.
Right.
Do you actually have branded hotels in your
Yes,
stars?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And you need them because you're the whales in the market. I mean, you're the ones that are the benchmarks. Your brand drives business. They're a generator to the properties. It's stealing what you bring is what we do. I mean, you know, if I'm going against a 300 room Holiday Inn and I'm a smaller 125 room, 5-room hotel 2 doors down, I can steal whatever business you've genned. And it doesn't have to be a rate relationship. I'm not fighting you on rate. I'm fighting you exposure of value. And it's easy to do that. I can get ahead of you on social. I can stay with you on your rate offerings, and I can keep pace with your destination strategies.
Wouldn't you say though that that's more from a transient aspect and not necessarily from a corporate?
Group. Well, now corporate as the corporations loosen up as to who they do business with and how they allow their business to be done, it allows me flexibility to take more business from that. Also, too, when it comes to group sales business, if I have comparable common space, I can offer a variation to brand. The thing that I can't fight is membership reward points for those who are dedicated. But I can fight them with I've gone as so far as actually writing checks or giving cash cards to people that love staying with our hotel, but because a branded hotel is opening up down the road and they're like, well, I love to stay with you, but I get points to bring the kids out later. How much is that worth? It's here you are. Here's money. Take the money. Stay with me. So go get your points in another market. I mean, I've done that. You know, and so there's
I heard
always
that on your other podcast.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a harder thing to fight the membership points system, but the point is, as we've talked about on the show, it's not a loyalty program; it's a frequency program. Mm-hmm. And if you can battle it with value proposition based on relationship and develop a longer life cycle relationship, you're going to get better value to them. They're willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, that's not a battle you have to fight, because it's not one you can win. So you can avoid it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
You know, because it's one of 6 or 7 factors that determine where someone chooses to stay. So just fight the battle and win in all the other ones, you know, whether it's location or quality or the friendliness of the staff or cleanliness or whatever it is, you
or even trust.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of funny, but the whole idea that a brand creates a level of trust is a very old idea. That was when information wasn't freely available to consumers.
Right.
So I think trust is something you can play heavily on, and you can make that trust done through the aspect that the independent hotel is not the cold, faceless, massive organization. It's actually people who are local experts and care about the community and can help guide you on experiences that are more beneficial. Like that's a fight that's hard for a branded hotel to fight, because not because they don't have the same exact thing, it's because they are very limited on how much they can expose of that.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the things that the brands do well, though, is their personalization efforts and leveraging that loyalty data I think that they probably do at least from what I see, they do a very good job of understanding what customers they want and who they can target from a larger standpoint, understanding the total lifetime value of customers versus, short-term or acquisition. All the data that they have in that loyalty program, and then obviously with the Marriott Starwood merger, how much data they have in terms of people and who do they want to target. I think they, at least on a 30,000 foot level, do a good job of putting that out there.
This is
the one thing you've said that I'm going to have to disagree.
I would disagree too.
I actually am going to say that they absolutely 100% squander the opportunity that they have, and actually what they get is accidental at best, because they are not at all doing personalization. They are not at all taking advantage of the data that they could use correctly.
They just don't target you because they don't want you as a customer. So you just don't get
That's right.
You personally, Ed. No one wants
Yeah,
to.
personally, yeah, that might be
Yeah.
true for Ed. Yeah, no.
So while there may be pockets where maybe they are doing something right, actually at their scale, they are completely missing massive opportunities to actually do something really well. And this is because there's a problem that exists with the brands today. None of them are hoteliers anymore.
No.
And because none of them are a hotelier based business, everything they do is the minimum viable level of that effort it takes to sell more franchises, because that's actually what brands do, is they sell franchises. They don't operate hotels as a main source of business. Yes, they all have management company type capabilities, but they no longer are hoteliers. And you look at, if a hotelier ever got to a large scale of data, they would care a lot more about personalization and how to maximize every dollar spent, which there's so much opportunity. The fact that brands don't ask questions of their travelers, I leave Hawaii, brand A Hawaii. Why isn't the mothership asking me, what's on deck potentially for my next destinations I'm interested in? Like, that's the easiest thing they could pull off. They wouldn't have to do anything, and they could just hone in on, okay, this person, we should talk to them about this because we have a gazillion hotels in that market. So I actually think that is the place where there's the biggest misconception, which is these brands are not doing personalization. They are not doing any of this well. And quite honestly, their scale is what covers that up. They are getting spam level response to efforts, which are huge numbers when seen alone. But when you push it towards the percentage of attempt versus success, it's really poor.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes a little bit to our conversation about the fact that brand will take up for brand, but it won't take out for the hotel itself. All of the data you're talking about is really relevant to the brand recognition, brand value proposition, brand exposure, and then the hotels are the augmentation of that as to locations and value proposition they represent to the brand in their location. And that's where I think the point that I agree with Ed on is that the personalization isn't bringing it down to the value proposition that benefits the hotel. It's the value proposition that the brand benefits from.
Right.
And the other point to be made for is also the ability to fight against brand is also the strength of the brand early on, before the internet really expanded the ability to understand what independent hotels stood for, was the recourse proposition. That if you had a bad experience at a hotel, if it was a branded hotel, you had recourse. It was, even if the GM didn't agree with you, you had someplace else to go to say, hey, I didn't have a good experience. That's been addressed well as time gone on, that management ownerships and groups and so forth recognize that because of consumer sentiment now, we need to be sensitive to the solution process associated with dissatisfaction. So there is recourse through public exposure. And that's diminished the value of a value proposition of a brand. Brand was originally created so that as you went down the road, Holiday Inn, you knew what the bed was going to be like, you knew what the room was going to be like, that homogenous experience kind of thing. And now brand is trying to search for what they can put in front of you as yet X brand number 29 or 31 that is going to be your niche of what you want to do. And to Ed's point, even that segmentation of brand development is not personalized; it's categorized. It's not really that point. I'd say come to the dark side, but they need somebody like you on their side to fight for them, because there's so many of them that are going like, what do I do? So they need you over there.
But this is where I think there's massive opportunity in this space to skirt what you can do as a branded hotel to dampen some of the effects of the negative aspects of brand. Yeah. And again, we're focusing on the weak points. If you spend enough time looking at any company, you can find their weak points and make it look obvious. So, while we may be beating up on them, there's some balance here.
They bring value proposition of purchasing. They bring value proposition of
financing,
training.
I mean, the biggest value they bring is the ability to finance the project. Let's face it. So, if you look at it ultimately, brand versus independent, the brand may not have as high of a ceiling potential on profitability. It has a way higher floor. than a independent hotel.
Eliminates a lot of risk.
A brand, a brand as a value proposition is you do not need an MVP team to hit within the range of expectation of financial performance of the asset.
Yep.
The brand does do a lot, so there's for sure.
Yeah, it's a much narrower band. Which if you're doing that type of investing, if you're not a hotelier, if you're a real estate investor, if you're any type of institutional investor, brands make way more sense.
Oh yeah, the investment.
But if you're a hotelier as an owner, brands make no sense.
But no, yeah, from an investment proposition, ability to scale and not have to have much internalization because you're reliant upon what you're paying for the brand to do, they perfectly need you, because the gaps that they don't do, the things that they don't provide resources for, you step in and say, let's line this up, let's fill the holes, let's make sure the paint looks smooth. And you do that, and they need that, because there's so many people that get into this and they get 4 or 5 hotels under their belt and they've yet to even turn on their first newsletter, or their first campaign build or anything. They're sitting around going, well, I know there's nobody walking in the front door, and it's like, well, because you're not telling anybody you're here, it's a simple process. So, yes.
And the brands have a struggle from a Wall Street perspective and a share price, because they've got to generate ROI on this stuff. So if they start doing a bunch of personalized stuff to boost each individual hotel, they don't see the ROI because their compensation is just based on a percentage of rooms revenue, right? And it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter which one it falls into, as long as it's part of the overall family. If they can get a little bit higher ADR, that's great, right?
And this falls into what I've said time and time again: is know who you are and stick to who you are, and you don't have a crisis.
Yeah. But actually, one more thing, because I'm just sorry to keep focused on this Hampton Inn thing.
You're mesmerized with this link.
No, it's shocking. There are no links. There are no links to the honors program whatsoever.
Oh, that
at all. And you're like, wait a second, they're spending millions with Anna Kendrick to go do this stuff, and there's nothing about there's nothing. It's astounding.
Well, it may not be in there yet. I mean, this isn't
there yet? What would be the first freaking thing you would make sure is in the header of the site?
Well, is this a live site, or is this
It's a live site.
Hilton is famous for going to market too early. Marriott's famous for going to market very late, but all
it's absolutely
no, this can't be, because this doesn't have their global privacy footer. So this can't be right. Oh no, there it is. Yeah, and Hilton Honors is down in there.
Oh yeah. that's helpful.
Their original beta test was they were keeping both websites live, the original and this one, and then they would change like the Google My Business listing for one, and then the other would come up in organic. And I'm like, how are you doing any type of comparison when your A/B testing is just like
there
isn't any. I mean, it's So
are they even doing a percentage distribution on it? Like they're doing a 10%?
Yeah. They've got a canonical link to the old URL structure, but that has a 301 to the new one. So I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like, who knows what they're doing. Yeah, it's hard to say.
Sorry, I digress, right? My one question.
No. That's the whole nature of the show.
That's what makes it interesting. I don't mean to jump early, but I do have a busy Friday thanks to missing multiple days this week to hurricane threat. So thank you so much for coming on, Lauren. Thanks as always for putting this together. I hope you guys have a great weekend. You can find out more about me at Flip2, and I'll talk to you all next week.
Thanks, Ed.
Red button. Red button.
Not the red button.
I was just going to say, you are more than welcome, because Robert put together the list you saw. I don't know if anything piqued your interest to it. For me, I have a major RFP at the top of the hour. So about 5 minutes before 1, I'm going to step away. But that will leave Robert in charge, which is a scary position.
Lauren has altered. Lauren has altered his business process. You are preparing for these RFP things.
Oh, no, I didn't say I was preparing. No. Please don't confuse that I have a scheduled thing with preparation. Mine's a globulous amount of information that I'm like, I go and say, hi, so we want to talk about, and we start from there.
Oh, but you're using a calendar now. That's so cool.
Well, they gave me this thing called an RFP, which to me is nothing more than like, okay, sure, that's what we'll talk about. So I'm all good.
He just opens AppSumo and says, "Yeah, this can sort out all your problems."
That'll fix this. This will fix that. That's all good for that. But Stephanie, no, is there anything? Again, this was all about you today to be able to join us with the show. Is there anything that we may have missed, or anything else that we want to make sure we don't not talk about in that sense?
No,
Because you are a rare person.
It's been healthy discussion, and I feel like I was on one side of the fence and you guys are on the other. But it's been great discussion. So I'm going to stick around and see, talk about the regular news. So yeah.
Excellent. Robert, it's up to you to determine what is the best next topic for us to
I
talk about.
never do that. I throw out the topics and let you guys decide. Now, Stephanie, be it known, with the lack of preparation, no one has read any of these news
I
articles.
take that
so
back.
it is
I looked at
really
a few of them. I looked at a
read
few of them.
everyone that-
headlines.
No,
Yeah.
I read every
No,
one
really?
today.
Well, Stuart, then you get to pick.
No, they're all kind of boring. Just pick one that doesn't
Hey,
have
it was a
anything about Airbnb.
okay.
And it will be good.
Hang on. For those who read, all of our vast number of viewers who get the email with it, I just wanted to point out I left out Tim Peter intentionally because we had said where everyone was scheduled to handle the hurricane. Tim was actually, as part of his well, everyone knows he's CIA. But basically what they did with Mr. Peter was he was in West Palm Beach. That basically caused the hurricane to stall because he was leaning against a lamppost, as he's prone to do, just eating an apple, peeling it with his 20-inch kitchen knife, and just minding his own business. And obviously Dorian saw that, froze up over the Bahamas. Tim then swam to West End of the Bahamas and popped out just to keep an eye on things. Same thing, had an apple, just peeling it against the lamppost, and that's what caused the turn north. So Tim is now in Cape May, New Jersey, which is causing the storm to now veer severely to the east. And,
I'm going to take the topic: floating day clubs.
Wait,
for
before we jump into that, can I have a point of contention? Because you misquoted me twice. I did not say it was a damp squid with a D. I said it was a damp squib with a B, which is a very different thing.
I thought it was a damp squid. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Did I get that wrong?
damp squib.
Oh, I
Like
see.
a squib is like a little explosive. So when it gets damped, nothing happens. It fizzles out, right?
Oh, it's not like a
firework
Q-tip.
gets
It's
damped.
not like a Q-tip.
Is that what they call it in New
I'm
Zealand?
Yes, exactly. A damp
I
squib
told
is what Hurricane Dorian was.
Stephanie that you have this muddled accent, that you originally came from Britain.
Yeah, I'm a mutt now.
We're actually going down through the entire British Empire of every former
I'm
colony.
pretty sure you Googled
Except
all
the
of
US.
the countries in the British
He did.
Empire and
Okay,
started going
I want to
through
pick a
it.
topic while we still have the benefit of Stephanie's
ahead.
input on this. Floating day clubs, the next big thing in travel and hospitality.
Did you like that? I was hoping we could get something to replace Airbnb as a thing to be really afraid of.
Anytime a subject line says the next big thing, it means whoever's writing the article has a big agenda to promote.
Has an investment in something. Yeah.
But I do remember succinctly the last time I was in Vegas and talking with MGM that they actually asked the question of the group. They said, what do you think is our biggest revenue driver? And most of the room raised their hands saying the gambling, and they said nope. And then they said, well, it's the shows, all the shows that they have and stuff. Nope. It's the DJ parties they have at the pools. There's a line through the
because they charge
the biggest money maker for them. Yeah. And so now this article, as it's pointing out, they're showing the flexibility of this. I mean, it to me, I find it unique because it goes in the same genre as food trucks. It's like, I remember when they used to be called roach coaches. They were only for construction sites. They serve basic foods and so forth. And now they're literally the mobile gourmet kitchen that goes to all these different venues. You're creating the destination, you're creating the opportunity. And now you're looking at these clubs and these opportunities, especially with more and more of the states changing their liquor laws as to what you can do as a license. I remember finding out when I was running the Melbourne Hilton in Florida that I could do a mobile liquor license. And I was like, really? And all of a sudden we started blowing up our catering because it was like, I can go anywhere and sell liquor. Are you kidding me? This is awesome. So we did the beach parties and all this other stuff, So I appreciated this for creativity in the sense that they're taking a dead zone space, much kind of like what New York City with the empty office buildings, and they're doing temporary hotels. I thought that was another angle to that, where like You're taking opportunity and you're creating something out of it, and then you're pulling out and going someplace else. That's why I thought this was a cool article about, hey, this is something new.
I think
the whole pop-up, the whole pop-up
and
phenomenon.
it will probably get emulated in other areas. It's a good idea, it seems to be on face value, but is it the next big thing for the industry?
That's just buzzbait.
Sensational clickbait,
yeah. That's just
you've got to look at the turnover and the success rate of nightclubs, right, is very, very difficult. And they do not generally, a few have long lifespans, but very, very few.
It'll be a fad for a few years.
I used to own a nightclub, and I could tell you that we did perfect. Our timing was make it as popular and as busy as possible till somebody comes in and say how much for the place, sell it at premium rate, walk away and watch it die within 18 months.
Right.
Yeah. Because none of those
sometimes that's only 6.
Yeah, because all those places are trending fads. It's not counterintuitive to hotels, but it's a different genre of hospitality that there's a cyclic value to those types of things, unless they're location based or local based, where they're because of the culture that they represent. Like you go to Deep Ellum in Dallas, that's kind of or 6th Street in Austin, or Duval down in Key West. There's a certain
Stop name dropping, Lauren. You're not cool.
Dude, I want to make a T-shirt that has all of the super cool drinking streets of all the United States on one shirt.
Broadway, Nashville.
Yeah, Memphis. Go down walking Beale Street.
Beale Street.
Yeah. I thought that'd be so cool. Just because every place has one in some capacity. Some are more famous than others, but those kind of things, those are destination things. Which is why I was asking you, Stephanie, about the social stuff, because the only successes I really had when I wouldn't say strapped, but when I had branded hotels to worry about was the lateral content I could generate in social if it was warranted. I mean, to your point, if you're between point A and point C, your only value proposition is the people that are using the product because of its location. I'm on the side of a road between here and Duluth. You're not going to talk about how green the fields are, but you can talk about the event that's in point C when you're in point A and target it. And you can talk about the things in point A when you're in point C. So there is some value proposition to identifying the people that walk in your door and being able to converse with them, because as you showed with Hilton, they don't care. They're not there to create anything other than exposure. So that's where we can punch at things like that. So yeah. Anyway, what article do you have, Mr. Stewart, since I grabbed so much coolness out of the DJ one?
I like the interview. I like seeing perspective. So the interview with the ex-CEO of Ritz-Carlton was kind of
partial. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really say anything profound in it, but he reinforced a lot of things that we say, and it's good to see leadership. And he's gone on to start as a new high-end property group, but interesting to see how his perspective on things like everything from millennials, or as Tim likes to say, adults under 40. His opinion on technology, things like that. But it was a good read. I don't know, there's not much to debate about it, but I enjoyed the article.
Steph, do you go over, and when you do your marketing conversations with the properties, do you talk about demographic segmentation? Do you talk about personas? Does that come into the dialogue?
So I think it's a marrying effort between understanding what the brand persona is, which most hotels don't know, and then matching it with what localizing the efforts in terms of getting information from the CVB and things like that, and putting the two together, I think. Mm-hmm. But I have so news related, I kind of went through the list. Maybe you guys discussed this in last week's podcast, but the merger between Aimbridge and Interstate Hotels.
Mm-hmm.
Did
1,400 properties. Yeah.
Yeah, we know. I mean, I know a lot of the people individually, and I think I was joking about. I would love to be a fly on the wall when they first walk in with their entourages from both sides of the conversation. The alphas in that room. I mean, as to who's going to pee on whose leg and be in charge of what is going to be monumentous, because there's big egos on both sides of that conversation. I'm like, how did they? I mean, I can see why. I can see the parallel. I can see the value proposition.
For sure.
Those guys
it's going to be like a battle in Braveheart with the English and the Scots running each other, just clashing forward.
Yeah.
And Aimbridge is going to win on that, because they were the acquirer, right? And that's
they've been acquiring bigger management companies like Pillar. Pillar used to be fairly big in their own right, and I feel like they just keep on with
Yep.
this momentum. It's kind of insane.
Absolutely. And
and
the messaging will be there won't be changes. You guys do such a great job. We want to, there's such talent. This is great. And then the other shoe
More
drops.
opportunity for everyone.
More
which is not
opportunity,
true.
and then get them into the octagon, figure out who survives, and take
Yeah,
the,
I mean, they're
take
building,
the
they're building
victors
a
out, and
guillotine.
you're done.
They're putting a guillotine out the
Yeah.
corporate office door. I mean, look what happened to Pillar. I mean,
Yeah.
Pillar had a really good internal team.
Happens in
I knew them personally. They had a
acquisitions,
great
right?
internal team, and then all of a sudden it was like they got fences put around them, they got walls put around them, then they got parts of their body taken off, and it's just it was like
You don't need two.
one
You
thing.
don't need two teams.
Well, it wasn't even that, but
You never need two teams.
one of the things that was always the success of a
Right.
conquering thing was to adopt what was being done good and incorporate that. And they don't do that. And Interstate's not famous for doing that either. Interstate is like
Right.
herding cats. I mean, they have so many ownership groups that think that they themselves are better than everybody, and they're trying to keep them organized. And now you get Amherst coming in thinking that they know they're better than everybody else. It's going to be a really interesting clash of titans as to how do they organize the variety of their relationships in all the properties, let alone the brand.
A reality show. I'd love to see it. They should put cameras in all the boardrooms.
I know. I want to see it.
But to your point, all the different ownership groups that they represent, like it's hard to keep all the different ownership groups happy, and like
Right.
this one wants this and this one wants this, and I want you to run my hotels like this, and how so many of them voice their different opinions across the board is drastically different.
Well, they have a lot more with properties directly across the street from each other and similar brand. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
I remember I was in New Orleans for the Interstate conference that I was asked to speak at, and I remember in the room I got these different management ownerships that they literally had their little posses or entourages sitting at their own little tables and talking. And I got one group over there that's like this is like everything I was talking about, they didn't agree with. And they kept wanting to interrupt, which I wanted conversation, so I kept having them, interrupt. And they kept pointing out what was wrong. And finally, I got to a point where I says, they started bringing up certain points, and I said, you know what? I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you exactly why you're wrong. And I just literally tore apart their entire strategy that they're putting out in front of everybody else. This goes back to my thing with you.
That's a great idea, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It endeared me to everybody, I think, because they were all tired of it. Because I guess they won all the awards, they did all this stuff, so they thought they were just the best out of all the whole group. So I had to tell them, everything that they did wrong.
And what was the name of that group, Lauren? I'm sorry.
But anyway, it worked out well because everybody else was like, "Can you tell us how to do that?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll tell you how to do it." I mean, it worked out great for me, but for them, it was like, don't walk in here thinking that there's a carpet being rolled out. You're not that good. Nobody's that good.
Everybody has an opportunity to learn all the time.
All the time. I mean,
Always.
every time. Yes,
Always.
absolutely. There's something to learn out of it, all of it. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting merger, and I think there's going to be a interesting labor market that comes out of it. There's going to be a lot of people, and we see that Dan Waxman was successful when they went through the KSL program because he's on his own. They, incredibly talented people work for both organizations, and there's some really smart people that, given the opportunity, they could be doing so much more than the limitations that they're living with right now. So there's going to be some infusion of some pretty good talent out there.
But again, the way these acquisitions generally happen is the team who does the acquisitions have their people, and they've worked with them before, and they trust them. Which again happens in the industry. You just see people moving around. People tend to work with people. Hey, that person's really good. I'll try to bring them in because I'm starting something new. They've got their groups, and you may wind up with a really good person, but depending on the overlap of some either incumbent or politically connected or whatever,
child of, daughter of, son of.
Yeah, whatever those relationships may or may not be, it's really generally not great for the group that's acquired. I mean, the odds are stacked against them.
And we know that there's so many people that are very talented at what they do, but they're not the political outspoken people in the organizations. They're the doers. They're the ones that get the stuff done, but they don't make the friends, and they're the ones that are the ones that are like, Sue or Bob, we're going to have to let you go because we have Tom's son coming and he's going to sit in your chair, and it's on
the acquiring company, they're the guys you go, get that done, and they go, done. And they know
Yeah.
what it happens. What they don't want are the people who come in who feel, hey, I got to kind of stand out. They don't need me. And they go, hey, have you ever considered this? Or could you, we did something that was really cool over here. They don't want to hear that, right?
Yeah.
That's just more complexity. It's a change of process. And it's almost like you're trying to make yourself look better and stand up and stand out. And guess what? We don't need that. We need how do we do it? What do you want to do? I can do that.
I'll make it
Yep,
happen. Yes, people.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yes, people.
That's
Yeah.
easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just give me the credentials. I can walk around and say, you die, you die, you die.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It is going to be an interesting blend of company, but all for, legitimate reasons with all the mergers around with the Starwood Marriott and everything else. It's just a big boys club now in the sense of how big can you need to be able to play with the leverages you need to negotiate with the OTAs, to negotiate with, purchase contracts and so forth. Even they and their current sizes are small compared to the larger conversations. These organizations, they have a greater leverage, period. So,
well, if you can manage a hotel portfolio that's twice as big with only 15% more staff, those are good economics, right?
I
Yeah,
know
but
that.
you have to think, it kind of goes back to the brand conversation we were having. At some point, you're going to get so large that the personalization, it's not going to make it down to the hotel level sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just what happens with that large scale growth, right? I mean, I feel like it's almost inevitable.
And that's not what it's about. It's like, yes, there is some benefit of getting some incremental growth off of ADR, occupancy growth of the hotel, and that's fantastic. But basically, you've got that fee revenue coming in, right?
Yeah.
And as long as that base continues, the little variations off of the performance increases.
Goes a little here,
and if you can get a 10-year deal, a 25-year deal, or whatever, that's even better, right? So,
Hey, Lauren, I think you have to leave, buddy.
Yeah, I gotta duck. But before I go, I want to make sure, Stephanie, you are always a welcome guest. Please always be here whenever you want to.
I appreciate it.
And anytime you want an invitation to it, or even if you just want to pop in with the link, now you know how they're made and all that stuff. Just come in, raise your hand off on the side, and we'll bring you in if there's an empty chair. Always. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. I mean, you'd stay. I'm leaving, but just thank you so much for being here.
Thank
and
you.
Robert, be nice, and Stuart, of course, you're always nice. So, but thank you so much for making it
okay,
in.
I'll try.
And I'll keep up with you on stuff because I have a lot of other cool conversations I would love to have with you about other things.
Absolutely.
So I hope so. So thank you very much for being here, and bye, everybody. We'll see you all later. And Robert, make sure to tell them where to find the show. Bye.
Bye, Lauren. This is where we hope nothing goes wrong, because if it does, we're screwed without Lauren.
Yeah, we have no one has any idea how the combination of technologies work. Lauren might not either, actually, truth be told, but that's okay.
He just mashes buttons until it comes on. Yeah,
exactly. So anyway, so we don't need to talk about the top story, which was ethics, because that's just boring stuff. We don't really care about that on the show. I just thought that would be a little contrarian to do it.
when Tim's on the show.
A New York Times article about what happens with all these brands in a downturn, and
yeah.
That one was,
that's our rut row. That's our rut row. We always close with the rut row.
Oh, okay. I want to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah. So, and we can, if there's nothing else to talk. I thought there were a couple interesting ones. I like the $850 million non-gaming wellness resort in Vegas, which I just thought was just a complete, and maybe going counter to everything is something really brilliant. But boy,
it's a risk.
Looks really risky.
Yeah.
Putting it right next to the convention center. And there are just so many kind of anomalies. It's very large, right? It's non-gaming. Yeah, and
I mean, I don't
know. Why do people want to go? Why do people want to go for
groups?
wellness to Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
I personally would see value in it because a lot of times I have to go to Vegas for conferences, but the majority of the Vegas scene, it just doesn't do it for me anymore. So, if there's a way that, I can enjoy Vegas without having to stay up till 4 a.m. and on the tables, then I might choose to go that route if I have to be there anyways. That would not be a destination for me, but I would consider choosing that over if I have to be there for a conference.
And I think that's what they're counting on, right? It's just the ancillary business they're going to get from all the people that just generally go to Vegas too much and are just, they're over it. So,
But do you
is
want
that
to
enough
be?
to sustain it? I don't know.
Do you want to be at the convention center for it, or does it really not matter where? Because that's really kind of not the greatest area of. I mean, it isn't. It isn't the middle of the strip. It isn't the middle of
Yeah,
downtown.
but they're not going after leisure consumers, right? It's like Stephanie said. I think it's the people that are going for a convention for some kind of conference that just
Like
don't want to go gamble.
IHG has their convention there every single year, so it's like,
yeah,
gotta go to Vegas again.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what we could all be eating our words, but I question whether it was a sound investment. There are probably other ways to make and other destinations to do something that would be more effective.
Yeah. It's just how many rooms was it? It's a big property. 720 suites.
Yeah,
right.
they're going to struggle to fill that.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough one. So,
I mean, there has to
anyway, because you look at
support it because some of the brands, have their little wellness, healthy spinoff that they're doing. So, I mean, there has to be some data out there to support it, right? If the brands have also went in that route to develop a whole brand around it.
Yeah, I guess so. We shall see.
Yeah, I mean, if they had acquired the Trump property, since it's located near the mall and things like that, maybe a better location, and done a wellness thing, because that property's always kind of suffered and dragged, right? Being a non-gaming property, right? So it's interesting how they do that. But hey, if you got $850 million to go build it, we'll see in 2023, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can ask Stephanie. So, what's your impression? Do you like Hilton's ad campaign with Anna Kendrick?
I personally, I do. I'm a fan of Anna Kendrick. I follow her on Instagram. She puts out funny stuff. I think she's extremely relatable and trustworthy. Hilton has they're going into round 2 with some of her stuff, so you'll see some new variations of some ad campaigns come out. But I think in a bigger picture, I don't know if you guys saw that Hilton now outranks Marriott in terms of the I don't know if I'm using the right word, but like strongest brand or brand presence that happened earlier in 19, and I have to say part of that must have been attributed to their campaign efforts.
Yeah, I really I think the campaign's very, very well done. I think they do a good job. I mean, it's not they've managed to kind of lace in all the kind of key product features that they're really trying to push in a very kind of not self-deprecating, but just a casual fun way, but they're making the points. And I think as a kind of a spokesperson, she's doing a great job. And apparently they're going to really ramp up the social end, which I was kind of surprised they didn't do last year. But Kellen Smith-Kenny, I think, is very, very data oriented. So I think they wanted to get it out, really figure out what is, does this have staying power? Is this working for us?
Do it the right way, like everyone should. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Measure results before
test and measure. Who would have?
I don't know. Yeah,
I think that's
crazy talk.
A missed opportunity from when the brands kind of got together and rolled out Room Key a few years ago. Like that should have probably happened from a messaging standpoint and a value proposition. Book Direct should have probably happened, on a greater scale years ago. And now they're rolling out that kind of a meeting planner type system. I don't remember what they're calling it.
The group 360.
The 360.
And that's kind of cooperative with the other big. Yeah. It's basically Thisco version 3, because they did Thisco, they did TravelWeb TravelWeb version 2. Now they're going to try the same. They did Room Key, not particularly successfully, and now they're doing the group thing together, which we'll see. Hopefully they won't go for the lowest common denominator, and they'll try to move things forward. But getting those things funded and backed is always tricky for these guys, because it's kind of a playing field.
Done a lot better than it did. Room Key was a flop that had some potential, I thought.
A flop is a very generous way to describe that. I don't think I've ever seen a more poorly performing site from an SEO perspective. It had no content. It didn't rank. I mean, it barely existed because it was only pop unders,
Top unders, yes.
for years. It was just absolutely crazy. So, yeah, no, their organic traffic was in the low single digits. It was insane. I mean, I literally had never seen anything that low before.
Yeah, but it was all on the execution. I felt like the philosophy, the idea behind it was not a bad one. The strategy was okay, but the execution was terrible.
Yeah, well, and then Marriott going to things like, oh, we won't reveal the price. You've got to click through to go see it. And it's like, that's not helping anybody. It's not helping you get clicks. It's not, it's just not helping the site. It's just, it's pretty awful. So, but they're still around. I don't know. I guess they're still getting funded because they certainly aren't, they can't be organically profitable. So, anyway, so it goes. What were some other Expedia trying to figure out if they should repurchase shares or buy stuff, and then being worried about if they buy stuff, are they going to get nailed by antitrust people just trying to stir things up?
And who would they buy at this point? What would make sense?
Yeah, it's
for the right,
well,
for the
in North America, I don't think they can. They get they're just so constrained, and they already did
HomeAway was their last big purchase in North America, right?
Yeah, so. and the really smart ones for them were Travelocity and Orbitz because they had massive air traffic that was not getting monetized by the previous owners.
But then they squandered those acquisitions by just turning it into a vanilla version of Expedia. It's terrible.
Oh yeah, and that's it, because they don't want them to be different or better than Expedia.
Yeah,
that's not the whole thing.
Unique value proposition.
Well, it was the same thing when they launched all the white label packaging sites. It was crazy because the whole goal was, how do you get people to just go to Expedia? You can't have any unique experience off that white label. It has to just be the garden variety Expedia one. And you start looking at going
too far down that rabbit hole, because they ended up like literally releasing the same website with slight different colors and tanking all their organic traffic that was probably sustaining some of those businesses.
So wait, we may be able to pick up why a certain hotel group we were speaking about earlier may be doing the same thing. Right, the different brands just have slightly different colors, and they're pretty much generic. And I don't know. Sounds like a strategy.
Yeah. The thing about if Expedia had done what they should have done, right, which is treated Orbitz like a separate, Travelocity like a separate business, and run it with a unique value proposition, they would have a shot at 3 swipes at the consumer when they're searching for destination hotels. And instead they've given up that ground to all their competitors.
Yeah, it's interesting. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars kind of unifying the back end, which was great. And you kind of thought, well, good. So now you can have a platform. So you got this services layer back there where you can access all this stuff. Now you can do creative things on the front end. Yeah. And they're pretty smart guys. They probably looked at them and, you know what? Same thing as we were saying with the major hotel brands. What's the ROI on it? If we do this and we differentiate it, we're spending this, we're creating risk. What's the return? Oh, that's not accretive to margins. So, it's better to just stick with what we've got, right?
But I've got to believe that the loss in organic traffic had to cost them a lot. Like, what would it really cost them to have a different front end and maybe have the CMS control different content for each property?
I know.
There was a way to do that cost effectively. And
there is, and they could have. And I don't know, maybe they were, and then they acquired HomeAway, and that distracted them to,
probably
go put the resources into that or something.
In the vacation rental space, probably.
I find it hard to believe that Expedia has so much data and they're based at, they have an office in Seattle, and when they talk about when they're working on their website, they go through something like 300 iterations, like making tweaks and things like that, on a monthly basis. So I can't imagine they would in one fell swoop make such a big error.
I would say they have 800 tests running probably right now. I mean, they are wholly data driven and really, really good at figuring that stuff out. But
Absolutely.
again, they'll make big, weird strategic errors. I mean, the whole European creation of Booking.com and growth of that was Expedia being arrogant and trying to force the US model and the merchant model onto the Europeans, and they resisted, and they did not, there was no kind of fallback scenario going, oh, well, what if this doesn't work? Then what's plan B? There was no plan B sort of thing, and it didn't work. And all of a sudden, 2-3 years later, they're playing catch up to a point where it's almost not possible. They are making some inroads, but it's not, yeah.
But also,
Booking
I mean,
dominating.
thinking about advertising and genius advertising, like the Booking.com commercials are also phenomenal and quite memorable, I think. So I think that
Yeah.
also helped them.
Yeah. Yeah, but not even though they're spending a lot on it, they aren't spending that much. I mean, I think Booking's still kind of testing this stuff to see how it, how it works. And Booking did not spend the money to go unify kind of the Priceline and Kayak and Booking back ends, right? They took a totally different technique. Nope, we're running these kind of things separately, and it's a little kludgier. So yeah, it's interesting. The Priceline advertising is pretty much died off.
Yeah.
I think the Booking stuff's getting tested. But I think their heritage was all SEO related. In online and digital, and they just keep hammering. Hammering that because they're good at it. The structure works well for it, and they know how to measure it, and they can keep testing, learning, and improving. So it's interesting how they're doing it. I don't know if any others were really that where that it was kind of a light. Maybe we should go to the rut row, which I think is the New York Times. Oh, this is interesting. Huh. I clicked on the New York Times link, got a little weird pop-up that said it was an untrusted site. I wonder who's hacking with them on
Well,
Washington Bezos or
it's fake
somebody's.
news, to be fair.
Yeah, who knows what's going on with that. But anyway, yeah, I think this whole thing with these numbers of brands, that the differentiation is just not adequate, and the downturn is going to get very, very interesting because there are so many more brands coming. I'm running around the nation doing a bunch of work with JD Power, presenting all the results from the 2019 guest satisfaction study, and it's amazing where you go, yeah, here are these brands, and they've only, and actually the way JD Power approaches it is you have to have a certain number of responses. So they'll go interview 45,000 people and 4 waves and all this sort of stuff. But you need to get enough responses to kind of factor into getting ranked and things like that. And next year, groups like Hyatt Centric didn't have enough response this year. They'll have enough next year. All the new Best Western brands and things like all these Glows and the Sure Stays and Vibes and all those sorts of things. A lot of them, I think they're only, I don't know if there's one Vibe in the US or something like that. They've kind of been promoting, you see in the trade journals, but they still aren't out in any sort of sizable function. Or Hyatt's Unbound collection, which is their soft brand. All these guys have tons of stuff out there. Even the major Marriott brands, I think only 17 of the 30 brands have enough responses on a pretty big sample to really have a meaningful number. So yeah, it's interesting. They're actually making the case for independent hotels because they're deflating the importance of it's all, and I think Marriott with Bonvoy, which doesn't even have Marriott in the name as a reward program, is almost that strategy is very puzzling to me. And actually, Karen Tampone is leaving Marriott at the end of the year, so I'm not sure if she was kind of the mastermind behind Bonvoy. I don't know if Marriott's figuring out that didn't work, or maybe that's a huge success and she's going to go jump somewhere else. But it didn't seem like she was leaving to go do this. It's like it's going to be the end of the year she's going, and who knows what. So I don't know. Going to be interesting. The forces of Wall Street versus the consumer and the hotel brands stuck in the middle. How do they work through that?
Well, and I think when the merger was originally happening, I kind of thought, okay, there's gonna be between Marriott and Starwood, there's gonna be some consolidation of brands, like they have to, right? And what I don't really have any insight on is to what that franchise agreement looks like. So if an owner, has already made a substantial investment, with X, and you're going to go and tell them, oh, I just built this hotel a year ago, and you're going to tell me I need to change it. And, like how long it would take to phase out any single brand, no matter how many hotels were flagged with that specific brand, the phase out in terms of what your franchise agreement says, I mean, it would take at least 15 years, I would think.
At least, yeah. Some of these contracts are 20 years plus.
Yeah, and they don't want to open them up and say, hey, we've looked at Renaissance and Westin sort of thing. They kind of close here. So, you're a Westin, we're going to call you Renaissance. That opens up that franchise agreement right there. Mm-hmm. Let alone they can't have in Times Square the Renaissance right down the block from the Westin. That's bad, right? So all those things go, oh no, we're hanging on to both. Because they can't lose footprint, right? That was the whole thing of how you aggregate. Right. Yeah, and that's why Starwood got bought was they basically fell short of their growth goals because it's hard to grow 4-star hotels. You can't drop them out of airplanes like you do with with a lot of the smaller select service brands. So yeah, they missed their numbers, and within 3 months they were up for sale. Within 8 months they were sold, sort of thing. I mean, yeah, it was brutal. And I think they all looked at that and went, huh, okay. Wall Street spoken. I guess we know what they think. So let's keep doing this. So yeah, it's I wish I could.
I feel like I haven't heard a lot of moaning about is like from a digital standpoint, like the changes that happen, like if you're doing a search on Marriott.com and you love your points and you go to Marriott.com and you want to stay in Texas, like the sort order of what that looks like, what it looked like before and after in terms of just volume of searches. So you might have been ranked, number 2, on M.com for a specific search just within the Marriott.com platform. And then after the merger, I had some hotels that, went from not even being on page 1 of even Marriott.com searches anymore because of how they rank within their internal sort order. And I feel like it didn't get enough, like nobody got mad. I got mad. If I pointed it out to an owner, they may say so, but what can you do? So just,
Right.
fighting even within that ecosphere, much less against Google and everything else was,
Yeah. And that's going to be the thing with the downturn. How do they keep all these owners, satisfied, right? To feed those mouths, because they aren't all going there because it's Marriott. I mean, some, right? They're, certainly they're dedicated, points hoarders who will definitely, keep with them. But a lot of folks on the fringe just go, we don't care that much. And some great jump shot data that I mentioned a number of times on the show is there's a direct correlation of, if you're a higher tier, more frequent member of one of these programs, and it doesn't matter if you're Marriott or Hilton or Best Western, whoever, there is a higher probability of them staying with a competitive hotel, because they're just more frequent travelers. There isn't a higher probability that they will stay more with you than anyone else, right? Which is crazy, right? You would think, oh, well, they're part of the program, they're staying with us frequently. No, they're just traveling more. And you're getting some sort of share of that. And I don't think a lot of the hotel groups really understand that, that dynamic, of it. They don't have visibility into a lot of that data, unless they're working with Jump Shot or somebody like that who has some pretty unique data sets. But yeah, it's amazing. And boy, some of those, the former Starwood brands, can't say, well, I guess I can say somewhat with the JD Power stuff. At least in terms of the customer satisfaction, they are suffering. I mean, Sheraton and Westin are down, and those were 2/3 of the portfolio. Renaissance is doing great. I mean, they have risen, and again, it's that acquiring versus acquiree dynamic. The former Starwood brands, I don't think those guys are doing. Aloft isn't rocketing to the top. AC, they're doing pretty well, but yeah, it's interesting how some of these things are coming around. So we will see. So
We'll see.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think for you, I think that just reinforces, that's certainly job security. I think you're going to have a lot of folks going, we need help. So how do we keep doing this better? So I think you're in a great space. If you were a publicly held company, I would probably be investing in you versus maybe the hotel brands.
Awesome.
Well, I'm interested to see, like I've seen the pipeline reports from some of the brands in terms of, and if you've read the reports, like the amount of increase in supply in terms of new development coming in the market is fairly substantial.
Oh, yeah.
But to an earlier point being made, like, if that downturn happens, how many of those hotels are not going to be able to get financed, and they're going to end up sitting on that plot of land for X amount of years, waiting for that, cycle to turn.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a lot of interest now for especially these hotel groups. They want to get stuff done within like the next 12 months. Because again, you start looking at like 40% of economists are out there saying, hey, this is, it's coming, folks.
Yeah.
At some point, we don't know when, we don't know what the catalyst is, but it can only.
If you haven't broken ground by now, you might be waiting a while, I feel like.
Yeah. But right now, I think, actually somebody I was talking to, actually last week, had a very interesting insight. They go, we've got a hotelier in the White House, right? Who wants to keep interest rates low because they've got a lot of debt on their hotels, and if interest rates go up, they're floating, and all of it is floating rate. It goes up. So for the next year or so, those interest rates are going to stay low, not just for keeping the economy going and re-election type, but actually for personal business benefit as well. So all the factors have lined up. So they're thinking for the next 12, everything's okay. So ultimately, for at least from an interest rate and things like that, then all bets are off, right? So who knows? So we'll see. So on that sunny political, and Tim Peter wasn't on here, so we can talk about politics, because Tim shuts down any sort of political discussion. But anyway, so Stephanie, where can people find you? Thank you very much for joining our show and hanging in, having the resilience to hang in for the
Yeah,
whole
trooper.
the whole duration. Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, so the personal plug, my website is cogwheelmarketing.com. But I'm also LinkedIn's like my favorite social channel as an individual. So hit me up on LinkedIn. You'll see some of when the brands make me mad and I feel like I need to vent, then I'm going to put a blog post out there and, share my opinion in that regard. So those are probably the two that I would recommend.
That's so weird.
I read a
Stuart,
few yesterday, and you definitely don't shy away from putting your opinion out there. That was good. Refreshing.
that's good.
She doesn't straddle the fence. She lands one side every time.
That's weird, Stuart, because he was brought up in Belize. And you can tell by the Belizean accent that he has. He's 100% on TikTok. It's unbelievable. That is his only social presence.
Get it. Get it.
Yeah.
Stuart, where can they find you?
Well, when I'm not on TikTok, you can find me at fueltravel.com or fueltravel.com/podcast, or just, search for Fuel somewhere. You'll
I
find
have listened to your podcast, by the way. So
Oh, yeah, cool.
I actually, there were actionable things, and I appreciate actionable insights. So
That's what we try to
more
do.
power to you.
That's our value propositions. We try to be actionable. Love to have you on at some point and talk about the stuff that we're very limited in our knowledge on the brand side. So would love to have you on if there's a particular kind of top 10 list kind of a thing. Listicles is what we like on our show. If you have something, love to have you on.
No, that's great. They only do the podcast. They really don't do video because people can see that they're all visibly inebriated when they're running that thing.
I have noticed you're drinking theme, and I'm okay with that.
There's definitely been times by the end of the show I'm like, how many beers did I drink? Wow. Yeah.
You can't remember what you said at the beginning of the show or that you're even having the show, but it's okay. It's good. It's good entertainment, Stuart.
Hey, we get people listening. It's fine. It's working. Whatever we're doing.
Very good. High signal to noise ratio. I always like to say about
I feel like we
fuel.
try. There's certainly some noise, but the signal is definitely
well. That's
more than normal.
If you just let your team do it, and if you just kind of stay on, maybe if you just moderate it and did the intro, and
then Witter on.
That might help.
Probably so. We have a few internal jokes too that get thrown away. A little bit of shenanigans, but not too much. Okay.
Hijinks and shenanigans. Yes,
yeah, a little tomfoolery here and there. Yep.
Exactly. Well,
how about you, Robert? Where can one find you?
rockcheetah.com or at Robert K. Cole on really all social channels, I believe. I don't have to fight for that. And Lauren Gray was with us earlier. Be sure to, Lauren Gray, is really, the site that you want to follow on Instagram, because I think that's, it's Lauren. It's a different side of Lauren that you normally don't see. Have you seen that?
Get on that. I'm going to do that.
I'll go search for Lauren Gray on Instagram. He's
or
very different from this video.
Yeah.
Or on YouTube. He has 3 million followers, something like that. Yeah, it's a whole different Lauren. Yes.
Wow, he's an influencer. Look at him.
Oh, he is. Oh, he definitely is. And he can just really click between personas just on a dime.
His
It almost
lip
takes almost
syncing is phenomenal. For that's how he got himself famous, was lip syncing.